Hi, welcome to Color Speak. It's Janet Huxley, and I am here today with a couple of wonderful guys because they are working to change the landscape of what we watch for entertainment in such a good way. And we are in such a need in this hour. So, welcome David Alford. He is producer, director, writer, and founder of Cross Purpose Productions. He has spent decades in the world of storytelling, first in Christian radio, then as a theater actor and director, and now as a filmmaker. And he brings a wealth of knowledge to this project we're going to talk about today, but not necessarily focus on rather his latest. And then we have Joseph Stam. He's an award-winning actor. He is also a co-director and co-writer, and he has been an integral part of cross-purpose production since his teenage years. And I took the morning off to watch his latest film on Prime, and I was blown away. I'm telling you, blown away with this young man's talent. So I'm excited to have them both on the show. And I just want to turn it over to you both and let you tell us some more about you.
How are we supposed to follow that
Yeah, I
introduction?
feel like
That
you-
was
yeah.
wow.
Wow, you said so much better than we could.
It's
Thank
all
you.
true.
Thank you for having
Well,
us, first off.
We're an odd pair. We're multi-generational filmmakers. I'm considerably older than I'm Joe's dad's age, but we still work together to tell stories for families and for people all over the world. And we've been very blessed. We both come from a theater background, so acting and telling stories in front of an audience has been part of our history. And I will tell you, the skills that you learn in being in a theater space with a live audience and seeing their reactions to what you say and how you say it has been so critical in making films. It a whole instinct. So we never get cameras, make stories, and we're getting no live reaction from audiences anymore. You have to trust your own skills to go, well, that joke may land or that dramatic moment may hit. And so this last 5 to 6 years has been quite an experiment in transitioning from stage to the camera, and it's been a lot of fun.
In filmmaking and in acting, because it's just a different landscape when you're uh, the audience is really close to you here rather than 200 feet away from you. And so you learn a lot of different techniques. But yeah, so we both started in theater. I grew up just in high school doing theater, and then when David was going to do his first film, Cross Purposes, he asked me to audition to play this young boy with cancer, and ended up auditioning and getting into that. And ever since then, I've just been working on acting. I've gotten into writing, which led to directing. And so just trying to learn all of the different aspects of filmmaking and apply myself as much as possible.
Well, I think I was remiss in not mentioning all of the platforms that your productions have been on. So you've been across the board on just about everything in quite a number of productions. Am I right?
Yes, we this Searching for the Elephant that we're here talking about is our fourth film. We did a short film to start off with. We started over a long weekend in 2019, and it's about a 39-minute film. And we thought, I just got some friends together here in our local area. We're in Southwest Virginia. We're not near Atlanta. We're not near Hollywood. We're not near anybody. We're out here in the middle of nowhere. And so I talked to a couple of friends who had done a short film before and said, hey, is there any way y'all could help me try to put this together? I think I want to try to make a little film kind of thing. And so, next thing I turned around and God had provided a cinematographer and someone who could do the lighting and someone who could do the sound, and all these people who had all these really terrific skills were all right here in this tiny little area in the middle of nowhere. And we were able to put this film together. Well, the film was picked up by a distribution company and distributed all over the world. And we couldn't believe it. And it won some awards at Christian film festivals. And it was competing against some of the largest Christian films of that year in Christian film festival categories. And it was just our cheap little nothing film that we did with a bunch of friends. But God blessed it, and that led into several full-length films, which we have out now. And those are on platforms literally around the globe, which still kind of blows our mind. I mean, in
Yeah.
some cases, they've been dubbed in Portuguese for South America, which means Joseph's acting, good as it is removed, and he's replaced by a Portuguese actor. And there's nothing more surreal than that.
Dubbed on top of my lines, which is interesting. Watching my mouth move and another voice come out. It's really funny.
That's been translated to Hindi for India. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Joseph, the thing about your acting, though, is the emotion that you convey on your face. So I doubt that there was a whole lot lost there. Do you know what I mean? I really did.
Well, I appreciate that.
You had me because, as I told you, it was intense. Let's talk about. Well, I want to circle back around first of all. Let's talk about cross. I'm going to get this wrong. Sorry, cross purposes production, because you started that.
Yes.
David. So you're obviously, both of you have backgrounds that would naturally lend itself to this sort of endeavor. But what was your real goal behind founding your production company?
It was a result of the response to Cross Purposes, the short film that we did. The
Okay.
response was so strong, and we knew we were going to continue again, that we decided to form it into a company and named it after that first film. It's a lovely play on words, and I think it works out well. But it was a response to success in that little short film, because the next film we did was called Found, and it was accepted by a distribution company within 7 hours of us sending it to them. They said it was the fastest signing they had ever had. And so, and it was an incomplete film. We had only shot the raw footage. We hadn't colored it. We hadn't done sound. We hadn't done anything. They saw the raw footage and signed it in 7 hours. And that was literally, they said, the fastest signing they had in their 35-year history. So that kind of momentum was building behind our company. So we formed the company and did it for that reason alone. I hadn't started off with that intention. I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. It just worked out that way.
Hmm. Well, I think it's interesting, having known so many different Christian writers and editors, and some filmmakers and producers in the industry. I think it's an interesting position that we're in, and I think that Searching for the Elephant sort of fits this bill in terms of letting so much that isn't said be what's said, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not just
Yeah.
walking in and just using all the Christian lingo and having the typical scenario as you work through the storyline. It's very much a real thing that is a real life depiction that says so much subvertly in terms of overtly. Am I right? So I feel like, yeah, so that film is different.
No, I appreciate that you said that, because that's something we're always hoping to do. What's really, film is a really incredible gift that God's given us, and we can communicate in a way that we can't in any other medium. And with film, you're put really close to these characters that in real life you may or may not want to hang out with. You might not want to hang out with a Jason in real life, but you're kind of forced to for 2 hours in this film, and you get to understand him in a different way and empathize with him. And the what's been incredible about the reception to this film is that there's a lot of things that people are picking up on that we did intend, but there's a whole lot more that we didn't even necessarily intend. We just left room for people to project their own experiences onto the film and then take away and then let God work within that and them take away what they needed to. And so it's kind of been a fascinating experience to see. We're always reminding ourselves that we want to try to uh, take a step back and leave room for the Lord to work within our thing, and not preach at the people too much. Obviously, we have the things we want to say in the film, but not to hit them on the head with it. Leave space for God to work in those moments.
That's a great way. We use this analogy. A stop sign has the word stop on it and tells you everything you need to know. Art is not a sign. Art is not there to tell the audience, here's your message, here's what I want you to hear, here's what you need to take home. That's all there is to it. Unfortunately, a lot of Christian art is kind of that. Here's the message. Here's what it means. Here's how you should interpret it. Let there be no room for mistake. But art doesn't work that way. When you look at a beautiful picture, you see something of your life in that picture that speaks to you. There's room in that picture for an interpretation. And in Christian art, we need to trust our audiences enough to leave them room for them to interpret their own lives and let God work in that interpretation through the art form. But unfortunately, we get a little mandative. We get a little protective of the message in such a way that we choke out the actual function of art. And so we really try hard to keep that in our films as best we can.
Because God uses like sermons and pamphlets, and he also uses art and film, and those aren't the same thing, but he uses them in very different ways. So we want to make sure not to confuse the two and let God, work in both mediums, I guess.
Yeah, I love that you just said that. I appreciate every single word. I think you hit the nail on the head. Here's the thing. I feel like most of the time, we as believers that are creative minds are reluctant to really put ourselves out there for fear of the backlash and the judgment that comes from those
Hmm.
people that we're trying to minister to. And sometimes I feel that it's easier to write to a secular audience than to a Christian one, because a Christian one is going to find all of the
Yeah.
reasons why it wasn't acceptable, or the nuances were off, or something should have been said, or something should
Hmm.
have been said, instead of just um, coming into agreement with the work that the Holy Spirit is doing. And it may look different and it may look outside of the box. But I heard somebody say recently, and I've been marinating in this for the last week, honestly, just think about those people around the world
Hmm.
that have access to a Bible. And for centuries, people didn't have access to scripture, the vast majority of them. Did that preclude them from knowing the Holy Spirit, or knowing the workings of God, or hearing the communication that God has for them? No, it didn't. Scripture can only support and substantiate those things that we learn from God directly. So it's important, I think, that we stop putting ourselves and our God in a box, and we do reach
Hmm.
out in creativity like you all have done, in a way that allows people to take the realness and the rawness of the human experience and to sort it out according to what the Lord is doing. And as someone who
Hmm.
watched this film, I loved, and I won't give it away, don't worry, but I loved that part. It's about my favorite part. You probably are not going to be surprised about this. There are a few of my favorite parts where I got choked up and started to weep. I mean, tears were coming to my eyes. The one when the main character, I forget, Grandpa Griff, what is that his name? Griff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Griff.
When he went to the widow's
Single
house,
mother. See the
Yeah.
wife. Yeah, I know what part you're
Yeah.
going to say.
I had to say, loved her character, loved her forthrightness, loved her boldness. It's what we all need to hear. And
Mhm.
so, my next question to you is, if you had to, and we can talk about the other films too, but let's just stop down
Yeah.
with this latest, Searching for the Elephant. Um, if you had to describe that film in maybe one or two words, or if you had to come up with the theme, number one theme, what would it be for you?
Ooh, I'm going to try it. I'm going to say addiction and redemption. Um, that film is about people pushing everybody out of their lives and pushing everyone away from them and isolating themselves, either physically on a ranch or emotionally through addiction. And so the film is about that process and finding your way back to your family and to a God who loves you. And that's the whole point of the film. And that's the part that we are excited that people who are going through this, because real people suffer through this every day, and that they're seeing that story at the end where that family comes back together again, and they're like, maybe that's in the cards for me too. Maybe that could happen to me as well. Don't give up. And that's the idea behind it, I think.
Yeah, and in my research, I met with a lot of people who were going through recovery or who had already gone through recovery, and I had kind of already developed the character a bit, but just sitting down and having them be super vulnerable with me and talking about their experiences and what's happened to them and where they are, and trying to, portray their stories in a really accurate way in this film was a great honor, but also very intimidating because I didn't want to get it wrong. And it was just amazing to see when we had the premiere of the film, just the reaction of just talking to them afterwards, tears coming down their face, and just feeling like that it was able to show how rough it is to go through these things and what happens when you isolate yourself, but then also the joy that comes with redemption and about being renewed to your family and to God. And so yeah, I would say isolation and redemption are two really important words that kind of go along with this film.
Well, and as I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking addiction's epidemic. It's an epidemic in our country. And whether we have known somebody personally that's been touched by that, or there's another something in our lives that's trauma induced, it's something that we can all relate to. And the sub theme, so here's the funny thing. I used to teach American and British literature to high school. So when
Me too.
we would read and we would look at films and that kind of thing, and we would always, pull out the themes. And so I'm already thinking sub themes. Obviously, the most important is forgiveness or the lack thereof, and what that looks like as a root of bitterness and how it can isolate us in life. And it's just a reminder that none of us need live in that place. So
Mhm.
I just think misunderstanding, of course, that springs from that when we don't communicate. And that always leads me back to Leo Tolstoy. He wrote this book, Anna Karenina, and it is
Yes.
laborious to get through if you've ever read it. But
Mm.
I think about it a lot. It's one of those novels that I always consider because I think the miscommunication that the author illustrates throughout the book and the needless suffering because of miscommunication and
Mhm.
stubborn pride in the human heart that is unwilling or incapable of just coming clean and speaking truth is
Yeah.
it gets all convoluted at that point, which is very much like these characters. So,
Mhm.
and the other thing that you said earlier before we were recording, and I want to say this because it's so true. So when you see the movie Searching for the Elephant and you see Jason, who's so drug addicted in the beginning, and it's so believable and it's so hard to watch. And I'm so thankful that you, David, said in the beginning, he's nothing like the character. When he's nobody
Yeah.
God. So you're talking about going through the just studying and learning for the part. What does that take out of you, though? I mean, it robs you of energy at the least. What's that
That's a
like,
good question.
that kind of part?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It was something that I was very passionate about doing accurately and doing it justice. And I think it was really important in the beginning I actually didn't talk to anyone. I just did my own research in the very beginning. I just watched, you know, dozens of documentaries and whatnot, just kind of absorbing all I could and all the research that I could do on my own about what things feel like, what withdrawals feel like, what that process feels like, what of what the specific drugs that I had Jason on, what that high feels like, what that does for him, how he numbs out all of his feelings when he decides to go with that, how he got here. So just developing his entire backstory from childhood, from his first memories up until the film starts, so that it feels like a whole life has been happening outside of the screen, outside of what we see in the film. And so I developed that a lot, and that was definitely a very tough process to do. Very isolating, I guess, which makes sense because for the character, and trying to find, Jason has this rage in him that comes from this hurt, and he carries that with him every day, all day, and I had to keep that rage in me, but not let it out every single day of the shoot. During the shoot, I just stayed in character all day because I couldn't snap out of it and then go back into it. It was just such a tough headspace that I had to just stay in it all day. So when I arrived to set, I was in it. And people just naturally just started calling me Jason when I was on set because they were like, it feels weird to call you Joseph when we can clearly see that you're not Joseph right now. And so I would just kind of stay in that and then get out of it at the end of the set day. Um,
Talk
but
about the clothes that you put on.
and then so yeah, a huge part of Jason was what I was gonna say about that rage too. Like you only see that come out in that scene after the police confrontation. You see it for a second there, and then when he confronts Griff about his dad. Those are the two places, but that rage that you see there was something that I was trying to keep inside and keep with me the entire, film. And so that was a tough headspace to be in. And I to really understand the way, he reacts to people when people look down on him. You know, I've spent a long time with our costume designer developing the look and the costumes for him. And so I would go and dress up in the costume and go to another city and just walk around and talk to people in character and things like that, and kind of see what happens, this kind of edge that Jason has to him, you know, a lot of times is a reaction to how people look at him and how people see him. And so that being able to live that out realistically for a little bit definitely helped. um but yeah, so it was something that in the past I had not had the best boundaries as far as like when I'm in character and when I'm not. And so I knew that I needed to kind of be have harsher lines on that. So it was like, okay, from this time to this time, I'm like fully in it, and then I'm fully out of it. And that's tough because some things, you know, stick with you, and it's a tough mindset to be in. But I was, you know, I also really love Jason, and I'm very protective of him and defensive of him. And so I know that even before we started shooting and stuff like that, people who knew me uh very well kind of laughed at the idea of me playing this character, not in a mean way.
No, I questioned casting him. I mean, there was a time when I thought, I don't know that Joe can do this. This is too much of a stretch.
Mhm,
And I made him audition, even though he'd done other films for our company. I'm like, no, you need to audition for this because this is deeper and darker than anything you've done before.
mhm,
And so he had to prove that he could do it. And he did. Of course, he won the role, but he beat out some other actors that we've been working with for a while. But he had to show us that he could go there. And that's exactly what he did. And it was interesting on set to watch him get into his character because you could see this bubbly, excited, sweet, energetic guy turn into this brooding, sombering drug addict. And to watch the process happen on set was scary and kind of awe-inspiring all at the same time.
What did your mother think of it?
um, that was really interesting. She I think what she said afterwards is like, I kept forgetting that that was actually you on screen. Like she was kind of able to I think differentiate the two because we seemed so different. I think every once in a while there was something that was really tough for her to watch, but she was like, it just didn't even seem like you. And my grandma said the same
It
thing.
was your dad that had trouble with it.
Yeah,
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 dad would watch the screen and get real protective, and he'd just get upset. He would get
yeah,
very upset that
yeah.
his boy was struggling like that. He had trouble separating the character from the actor.
Yeah, definitely. That's been tough for my family. And in the past, in this role and in past roles, some tough things have happened to my characters, and it always gets my dad. He's a very sweet, sensitive guy. So I was nervous before the premiere of that one. I was like, Dad, I can sit with you if you want. Like, it'll be okay. I'm good, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh gosh, well that's why I asked it because as a mom and grandma, I was thinking, oh, okay, if I saw my kid that wasn't that part playing that part. But then, you're a professional.
Hmm.
You're going to move into that when you need to. And so, yeah, I think that would have been extraordinarily difficult. So my next question is, how long were you shooting? How long did you have to be in that part? And what did your nights look like? Were you able to move out of that character so you could just rest and go to sleep?
Hmm.
On nights we weren't shooting. We shot for a month. We rented a farm out in Southwest Virginia, and we were fortunate enough to be able to rent the house and the land so we could make it our filming base. So every morning we'd meet there at the house. All the crew would be there. Some of them were living in the house at the time we were shooting. So we had a base that we would go to. And so we shot for about 30 days in that house. And sometimes it was nighttime shooting for the nighttime scenes. We'd shoot till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And then other times it was all during the day.
Yeah.
The schedules would vary from day to day.
It
So
was about 12-hour days. So yeah, on the way to set in the morning, it was funny. So like music is a huge thing for Jason. That's kind of how he gets out a lot of his pent up emotions through his screamo rock music, and which is never something that I've enjoyed before, but I had to find what Jason likes in it. And so that was an interesting process too. So I would listen to like I had a playlist that I would go from like very Joseph music, and it would get progressively more like Jason music. So then by the end, by the time I arrived on set, I was like in that headspace and I was there. And then going back from set, I'd do the opposite. I'd start with the Jason music and then work up to the Joseph music. So that was kind of an interesting part of it to
I
kind
think
of.
it's really important. And we put Joe in another film called Royal Ashes. Joe plays a young man with autism. And
Mhm.
that was something that we struggled with because we thought we would try to find an autistic actor to play the role. We couldn't find one that would work. So Joseph took on the task of doing it. And I think what makes his acting so successful is Joseph never plays a character. He never plays autism. He never plays drug addiction. He plays characters who experience autism or characters who experience addiction. He never attacks it as the problem being the character. He wants to find the person inside of it and then layer it with the issues on top of it. And I think that's why you find that his roles are a lot more engaging and a lot more satisfying to people who are in that experience because they're like, you played me like a real person, not just my problem. And I think that's what a lot of actors will go for. They'll go straight to the addiction or they'll go straight to autism and skip the fact that there's a full dimensional person in there. It needs to be shown first, and the other factors are layered on later.
Well, we don't have to talk about me the entire time. A lot of that is in the writing that David does because he paints these people, he structures these people in the script as three-dimensional people, and they have the problems on top of it, like he was saying. And so yeah, I mean, I think got super protective when people were, dismissing Jason as just the drug addict, or and I'm like, no, that's like he's a three-dimensional person, and that is something he experiences, but that's not him, and it's the same thing. It was definitely dicey taking on that character that was on the spectrum when I'm not. And I, talked to people about it who are on the spectrum, and they said, we don't care, that's acting, we understand. But, we just have a problem when in films the people with autism are portrayed as autism, as the autism character, instead of a three-dimensional person themselves. So then I had to go back to the script and I was like, no, like this is a three-dimensional person that I see in the script, thanks to David's writing, and this is what I see here. So, I could go with confidence and know that I already had a foundation of a three-dimensional person there, not just kind of a caricature. So
Well, David, I love Joseph. First of all, I love that you gave David credit for the writing, and you certainly covered all bases in terms of the reasons why Jason felt betrayed, abandoned. Um, Nobody ever starts out an addiction because they think it's a good idea. It's
yeah.
Yeah.
so slippery slope, and it always hinges upon those human experiences, that three dimension that you talked about. So
Mhm.
I also just keep thinking about just getting back to, before I lose that train of thought, just the frequencies. I kept thinking frequencies in terms of you're needing to be in character and to play that part, and what
Mhm.
you had to take on spiritually in order
Mhm.
to do that. And of course, that is substantiated by just talking about the music you were listening to and the
Mhm.
ways that you were able to put yourself there in order to do a service to the character, which is really great and commendable. And I've always wondered about that. I'm not an actress, so, but I always thought
Mhm.
you hear about these people that throw themselves into and immerse in that role. And I've
Mhm.
always wondered, gosh, that's got to be just a lot physically, mentally,
Yeah,
spiritually, emotionally for you to do.
it is. Yeah, no, I won't lie. It definitely is, but there's a great joy in it as well, and finding that person and getting to know them for all their strengths and weaknesses, and not judging them. And yeah, it definitely takes a lot out of you. And it's tough because for me, I am one of those people who kind of has to stay in it the whole time. I wish I could be like an Emily Blunt sort of actress who can just turn it on and then the camera's cut and then she turns it right back off and she's, all right, what's going on for lunch, and I just can't do that. I kind of have to stay in it the entire time. So yeah, it definitely takes a lot out of you, but it was very rewarding, and I was very honored to be able to take a stab at it. And so I hope that it reflects it honestly, and I hope that it helps people see, everyone has a Griff in their life and everyone has a Jason in their life. So I hope now when you see those people around you who are isolating themselves or whatnot, that you're able to maybe understand them and empathize with them in a different way after seeing the film is kind of the hope.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important that we not whitewash these characters and their stories. They live in a very real and hard world, the one that we all live in. And as filmmakers and storytellers, if we clean up the world to make it look prettier and shinier than it is, then the people who watch these stories don't recognize their world in our stories, and it feels artificial. It
Yes.
feels manipulative. And if we create stories that feel artificial, what are we saying about our faith and our God? We're saying it could be artificial and manipulative as well. So if we don't reflect the real world and the real pain of these characters, we come across as fake, and it damages our witness more than it helps. I'd rather not make movies than make movies that ring as false and manipulative to the audiences that go to see it. Because in that sense, we're not helping at all. Jesus in the Bible, if you look at the stories he went through and the tragedies that people went through in the Bible, it is a rugged book. There's some hard things that happen in that book. It's some dirty, rough stories that are hard to get through. And the Bible doesn't clean them up in order to make it sweet for all of us, so it looks like a Hallmark movie. It looks like what it is. And I feel like as storytellers, we have to be a little bit braver and do the same thing.
Mhm. I couldn't agree more. We're not writing for the Pharisees and Sadducees by any means.
Yeah.
I love that. So by the way, I just wanted to mention, I love, because I was going to ask you this when I saw the film. I thought, oh, it looks like it's shot in Virginia, because I have some family and I've been out there. So, yeah, I wondered about that. Shoot. Well,
It was beautiful.
yeah, it really is beautiful. I want to talk, I know that we've talked a lot about your character, Joseph, just because, again, in case I don't say it again, it was just so well done. It
Thank
just
you.
so incredibly believable to the point that it hurt, if that makes sense, to watch it. But then Griff, I just really appreciate it too, because I feel like we all have those sorts of people in our lives too
Yeah.
that have just refused to talk about some of their trauma, to be able to release it, to be able to move on, not hold on to any roots of bitterness, because
Mhm.
it's like drinking poison and hoping the other person's going to die. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's so important that we talk about those sorts of things in our community, both inside and outside of the fold. And so that was done well. Um,
Thank you. Yeah, Rick McVeigh, who played Griff, did an incredible job, and it was so much fun getting to work with him. He's very honest and he's very cool. And so you were talking about that scene when he goes to visit the soldier's wife, and they have that conversation. And that scene was so much fun because Paris, who played the wife, they had known each other for a long time, right? They
Yeah,
had
they
acted
worked in
together.
theater on stage together for a dozen years before they did the film. So they were old friends.
Yeah, so it was so much fun because we did a rehearsal with them, and Rick was kind of who was playing Griff was kind of having trouble with the scene, and why he was finally letting go of that bitterness that you were talking about, and why he was suddenly confessing this thing that he had been keeping in him for however many years, and he was kind of struggling with it, and he was like, because at the end of the day, it is my fault. It was all my fault. And then Paris starts going, no, it wasn't. What are you talking about? And they start like going back and forth and like arguing, like as people about it. But then it's like slowly started to morph into their characters arguing about the exact same thing, and about forgiveness. And then for a while there, Dave and I have been trying to help with that, and then we both just kind of leaned back and just let them kind of like argue it out for a while. And then we were like, "Do you just want to transition into the thing?" And they just kind of slowly transitioned into the scene and started, and it was so much fun to kind of see that organic process of kind of the actor struggling with something in real life, and then that kind of morph into the film. And so I think that's why that scene, along with a lot of other things that were very personal for the whole team, I think that's why it rings true, is because we were kind of able to, infuse it with really personal stories.
Yeah, we're really blessed here in Southwest Virginia. We have a theater here that's It's a regional theater. It's a professional theater. It's got about a dozen actors that work here full time. And so for a tiny town, I can call up several of my friends I used to work with in the theater and go, hey, will you come do this role? And I have beautiful, talented professional actors who are seasoned and who are used to playing off each other will come on set, take on the roles, and knock it out of the park. And a lot of independent filmmakers don't have that, especially low budget filmmakers like us. They often call on Aunt Sue to come play, the market lady or whatever. And so you'll have moments in films where it's like the film's going on pretty good. All of a sudden, a really poor acting performance hits. You're like, oh, that didn't quite land at all. So that's because that's all those people had. And we're so blessed to have so many great professional actors to work with here.
I've also wondered that on occasion where it almost stops up the momentum and you're wondering, okay, so what was that all about? But to each his own, and we all
Yeah.
have talents. You certainly wouldn't want me in there or singing, and I'd gum it up too. What is you mentioned there were some other projects you've done. So let me just clarify for those still wanting to know where they can find this. So I found Searching for the Elephant on Prime, and is it available anywhere else?
It's on Tubi as well.
If you watched the Super Bowl this year, you watched it on Tubi, and it's on that platform for free. It's got commercials in it, but it's there for free.
Okay. All right. So, and I appreciated the link that you sent me because that did help me. Um, I'm just trying to be helpful to those looking for it. Because first when I did the search, it didn't come up for me, but the link did. So I just want to make sure that I'm clarifying how people can find this. But it's called.
I can help you out with that. Our
Okay.
website has all of our films and all the direct links to all the platforms. You can see all of them. So if you go to our website, it's www.crosspurposes.productions with an S. If you go there, all of our films are there, including Elephant, and every platform on the planet, just about that they can be found on. And you can just click and it'll take you right to that link. But Elephant's on Apple TV, it's on Amazon Prime, it's on, I think, Roku and Tubi as well.
Okay.
But all the links are there. You click to it on there. You can find them directly. But www.crosspurposes.productions will take you to any of our films and the platforms that they're on.
I like that. It's even better than, trying to do a search by holding down the button and talking into it. I don't know what I want, but this way I want. So tell me some of the other ones. You mentioned Royal Ashes, you mentioned Found.
And then Found was done in 2020, and it's taken off. It's literally around the globe. That little film we shot in 2.5 weeks during COVID. And as we were shooting this, it was our first time to do a full-length film. And as we're shooting, the governor's putting out orders of, and now only groups of 50 people can get together, and now only groups of 30 people can gather. And we're watching the number tick down during our shoot, realizing we're about to hit the number of our cast and crew. And if we don't get this film finished, or if someone comes down with COVID, we're shut down and the movie is not going to happen. We lived with that every single day. So we ended up shooting an entire film in 2.5 weeks, which is insane. Nobody shoots a film that fast. But that film has gone on to take off. It's been seen by millions around the globe on streaming platforms. And it's turned out to be this blessing of a little story that's actually done really, really well. And so we're really excited about that. So Found was our first full-length one. Cross Purposes is our first little short film we did. And that one was the one that got it all started. Then Found, and then Royal Ashes, and now Searching for the Elephant. And then we're working on a new film for this year.
Okay, so what are you working on?
We're working on this World War II film right now. It's based on a true story about the White Rose, which was this resistance group of university students who lived in Nazi Germany. They lived university, and they saw what was happening around them, and they were, because of their faith, they knew right from wrong. They knew that what everyone was going along with was not right, and so they started to write these leaflets and pass them around, criticizing the Nazi regime and criticizing Hitler. And so the leaflets got passed around the campus, then around Munich, and then around cities across Germany. And it really became quite a movement with protests, and it was all started just by this brother and sister. And then the Gestapo got involved and started hunting them down and trying to find the people who were making these leaflets because it was starting to make a change. And so that's the story we're working on next. And yeah.
Yeah, we're hoping to shoot a short film version of it this fall in the UK. We've got a university there that we're working with that's interested in producing it with us. So it's going to be kind of a different take for us. We haven't done anything quite like that before. It's a different style and a different feel than what we've done with the other films, which were all shot right here in Southwest Virginia.
Yeah, so that was my question as you were telling me about it, Joseph. I thought, gosh, that's an endeavor, right? Because you have to find the appropriate buildings, setting.
Mhm.
Then you have
Yeah.
to think about costuming, which is it's a different level. When you
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely going to need to be a European production, hopefully. And so that will be, yeah, a whole nother level for us.
But true to form, though, in research, we sent Joseph to Germany, to Munich, to
Mhm.
retrace these kids' steps and to live in their lives a little bit. Now, he's not acting this time, he's directing this time, but just to figure out what the life was like for these kids, he
Mhm.
needed to be there. So we sent him to Munich to retrace their steps and go to museums and their grave sites
Mhm.
and learn who these people are firsthand so we could tell their story with authenticity.
And that was really incredible to, yeah, just kind of retrace their steps and meet up with historians there. They have museums for these people there in Munich. And so to go and meet with historians, and the museum was located within the university where they went. So they would be telling me about things that happened, and then they would go, oh, and I can go show you where that happened, and so it was so cool to kind of live their history again and really get to know them and their personalities because they were some pretty rebellious, wild, artistic, passionate young people who really took all that talent and all that rebellion and directed it in a really positive direction. And so they're pretty fascinating people.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Very brave as well. I can't
Hmm.
imagine. So,
Yeah.
just a couple more questions and then I'll let you go because I know that
Yeah.
you've given us so much time. So, when you're looking at stories to do, are these stories you come across or are they stories that you write because you want to tell a story? Now, I understand this last one, The White Rose, is a little bit different, but just even getting back to Searching for the Elephant, is that something in your mind, this story you wanted to tell about redemption and addiction and all of that? And it has so many sub themes and different things going on regarding the plot. It's kind of it's not it's beautifully done. Is that something that you wrote, or did you come across the screenplay and think, oh, this is something I want to do?
Mm.
Now, all of our films up till White Rose, which is based on true story, are all stories that we've created. That story of Found that I talked about was actually a book that I had started writing a few years ago, and I decided, oh, hey, maybe this would work as a screenplay. So I'd taken a concept that I'd come up with and a story, and then kind of built it into a book, a narrative form, and then thought, oh, I'll flip it over to a screenplay. Often, like with Searching for the Elephant, I'll take two characters that I find fascinating in their own way. And I think, what would happen if I locked these two people in a room together? What would happen? And I try to find two people that would be, I don't know, just like vinegar and water. And so in this case with Griff and Jason, I thought, well, here's two men who are pushing. They've like built castles around them. It's like having two castles next door to each other. And if two castles live next door to each other, what would war look like? Because they're literally lobbing things over the walls at each other. And so I thought, well, let's build up all these self-defense mechanisms. Let's build up all these problems and then shove them in a place in a tight space where they can't get away from each other and watch what happens. So I often will start a story with that concept, nothing more than that. Same thing with Cross Purposes. It's a story about a young boy who's dying of cancer and a hotshot med student who's thinking about nothing but his future. Let's put that together with a boy who has no future, put them in the same room and see what happens. And that's what that story came about from. So I usually start with characters and situation and rough situations, and then just kind of the actor in us kind of just lives it out. You just like as an actor, you sit down and go, okay, What would I say to that? What would I say to that? And go into that and build scenes that way. And that's usually where the writing comes from. But all of our stories have been original stories up into White Rose. It's the first time we've tried to adapt a real life story
Mhm.
to a script before. And it's been a fun process,
Yeah.
really challenging, but really fun. What's really hard about doing real life stories is there's always an element of fiction because you don't know what these people said in the situation. You don't know how they acted. You've got some historical accounts that you can look at, but these kids weren't famous. They only lived to be 20 something. They were martyred for what happened to them. So they weren't documented. So they just, all we have is little letters and things that friends have said. So as a writer, you have to fill in the gaps. But what was so exciting is things we before Joe went to Germany, we had to kind of make up some things. He'd go to Germany and find research and bring it back and go, oh, hey, what we made up is really, really close to what actually happened.
Yeah.
And to seeing that happen over and over again was just so affirming, like, okay, I think God's telling us we're on the right track here.
Yeah.
Because
It felt like the people were still speaking through us because there was so many times they'd be like, oh, that was exactly their reaction to that event, and we didn't even know that till now, or something very similar to it. So yeah, that was very reaffirming, and we just have an endless well of things to tap into for that now with all the research we've done. So yeah.
Well, that's just so encouraging. I can see Holy Spirit at work. I can see that we're entering a new
Mhm.
day. I just want you to know that you two are an answer to the prayers of so many of us, mine particularly, where I just pray that there is going to be a better offering for us when it comes to entertainment, because I don't turn on my television very often. I have all the things, Netflix, Prime, Hulu, all of it. My kids have set me up.
Right.
Well, for those things
Mhm.
they want to watch too when they get here. Um, I'm very careful over through my television. I don't welcome anything that's not partnered with Christ in the home. So it's hard to find entertainment. And it's hard to find those flicks that are very historical in nature, which is what I really appreciate, because I feel like we can't move forward into the present or the future unless we really know the past. And so I think that's why I'm so interested in the past. But so often, even movies that are historical bring other things in that don't need to be in there. And
Mhm. Yeah.
I think I speak for the Christian community, for even just all of us at large. We're kind of worn out with all of the offerings that always seem to be resoundingly of the same theme: demonic, so much violence, so much sex, all of the stuff that happens that that we don't need to have be a part of the stories that we tell to encourage one another and how we triumph over adversity and struggle. And it's a new day, and you two
Mhm.
are leading the charge and you're
Mhm.
runners.
it
So
is.
appreciate it.
Well, and let me
Thank you.
encourage you too, in your viewers, that it is a new day for Hollywood too, and that the independent filmmaker has a voice. I mean, the people who make films, anybody can grab a camera and make a film. I mean, it don't. If you want to be a filmmaker, don't wait for Hollywood. Don't wait for them to come get you. Be a filmmaker and make a film. Grab a camera, grab some friends, and do it. The technology is there. The access is there. You just have to do it. We started this company with a camera and 5 or 6 people who had kind of sort of knew what they were doing. And 5 films later, we're now working with professionals, and some of the most gifted, talented people in the Christian film industry are working with us just because they loved the idea of the stories. So that's all it takes. We had a bunch of homeschoolers and a bunch of kids. My children were on crew for everything. My grown kids, or I mean, if you look at our cast list of our early movies, they all have the same last name, because it was a family project, and it was friends, and it was homeschool friends, and it was just a whole group of a community got together and do it. Just talk to people, find out what they have. The resources are out there. Write stories with what you have around you. Grab a camera, film it, and put it out there, because that's the industry that's taking over Hollywood now, and that's the independent filmmaker. So there's a place for you if you want to do it. Just do it.
That's great advice. One of my favorite verses is in Revelation, and it's the one that says, "We overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony." And the word of our testimony is so important. And we all have a story that is, because we all have stuff we go through. And I
Mhm.
think it's important that we share it because we take so much encouragement from one another. Yeah.
That's right. And your story's important. And chances are, if you've got a story, 1,000 other people can relate to it and will. That's what we found.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. What a blessing to have you here today, gentlemen. Thank you so much, David and Joseph. And I'll have this in the show notes. Searching for the Elephant is the film that is the latest that we talked a lot about today. You have others as part of Cross Purpose Production Films. I love that. Cross Purpose. Love it. Cross Purposes, plural, production.
Yeah, that's right.
I messed that
Got
up.
it.
So
Well,
it's
thank you for
either.
having us.
Yeah,
We really
thank
appreciate it.
Thanks.
thank you, and thank you for your questions. I really appreciate them. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciated seeing it was really nice, like I said, to see the film and have it be so fresh in my mind and be so impressed with it that what a blessing to have you here and to be able to talk about it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Stick
you
with
very
me
much.
for just a second after I log off here. And the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us today on Color Speak. I hope that your day is filled with color, lots of creative ideas, and lots of testimony in your day. All right. Thanks for joining us.